Graham stopped breathing at the 14-second mark. Not from shock, from recognition. The video his friend sent from Colombia was 29 seconds long. Beach festival. Sunset. Strangers dancing. Except two of them weren't strangers. The woman's hand cupped the man's jaw. Gentle. Familiar. The silver ring on her finger caught the fading light. Victoria. His wife. The man leaned into her touch, eyes closed, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Owen. His son. Both declared dead 17 years ago. September 2007. They left for a weekend sail. The Coast Guard found their boat drifting empty. Engine running. Sandwiches uneaten. No bodies. Graham lit candles every year on the anniversary. Kept their rooms untouched. Believed the ocean took them. He was wrong. They didn't drown. Victoria was 38 when they vanished. Owen was 16. Now the way she touches his face isn't motherly. The way he holds her waist isn't innocent. They're not hiding in Colombia as refugees. They're living as lovers. Graham watched the video 83 times before he packed a bag. One-way ticket to Cartagena. $4,800 cash. No return date. He didn't go to forgive them. He didn't go to understand. He went because 17 years of grief doesn't just disappear when you discover it was built on a lie. Some families are torn apart by tragedy. Others are destroyed by choice. This is what happens when the dead come back to life, and you wish they hadn't. Welcome to Compass True Crime Stories. Kindly support and encourage us by subscribing to this channel as we continue to keep you entertained new true crime stories around the world on a daily basis. Don't forget to comment, like, share, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next interesting and chilling true crime story. Portland, Maine. Spring 2005. Graham Holloway worked the ER at Maine Medical Center. 12-hour shifts, rotating weekends, the kind of schedule that kept his hands busy and his mind from dwelling too long on what he'd lost. His first wife died during Owen's birth. Complications no one saw coming. Hemorrhage that took her in under 3 minutes. For 13 years, Graham raised Owen alone. Father and son. Breakfast before school. Homework at the kitchen table. Little league games where Graham cheered too loud and Owen pretended to be embarrassed. They were enough for each other. Until they weren't. Community Sailing Club fundraiser. May 2005. Portland Harbor. Victoria Brennan stood near the dock, teaching a group of kids how to coil rope properly. 8 years Coast Guard service. Now managed Casco Bay Marina and ran navigation courses on weekends. 36 years old. Composed. The kind of woman who could splice a line in under 30 seconds and quote weather patterns from memory. Owen, awkward and 13, watched her hands move through the demonstration. When she noticed him staring, she smiled. Want to try? He nodded. Graham saw it from across the pier. His son, quiet, guarded since losing a mother he never knew, actually engaging with someone new. Relief flooded through him. Victoria didn't rush. She showed up at the right moments. Fixed the broken dock gate at Graham's house without being asked. Remembered Owen's debate tournament schedule. Brought coffee to Graham's night shifts at the hospital. She taught Owen to read tide charts, tie bolins, navigate by stars. Treated him like he mattered. By fall, Graham and Victoria were having dinner twice a week. By winter, she was staying over on weekends. By spring 2006, Graham proposed. Small ceremony. June. 40 guests. Owen stood between them in a navy suit, smiling for the photos. Graham thought he'd finally given his son what he'd been missing. A complete family. Owen turned 14 that August. His guidance counselor noted in a midterm report, demonstrates unusual maturity for his age. Seems more comfortable with adults than peers. Graham took pride in that. Thought Victoria's discipline had shaped his son into someone responsible. He didn't notice Owen stopped accepting sleepover invitations from friends. Didn't notice Owen preferred staying home on weekends, helping Victoria with boat maintenance at the marina. Didn't notice the journal entry tucked inside Owen's desk drawer, dated November 2006. The ocean makes sense. People don't. By the time Owen turned 16, Saturday sales had become routine. Victoria and Owen. Every weekend. 6 a.m. departure. Return after dark. Their thing, Graham called it. Father-son bonding, except with a stepmother who knew boats better than anyone. Graham worked weekend ER shifts. Trusted them completely. Why wouldn't he? Victoria was former Coast Guard. Owen was a strong swimmer. They had emergency beacons, life jackets, a float plan filed with the harbor master. They'd return sunburned and quiet. Victoria always had explanations for late arrivals. Strong currents. Navigation practice. Engine trouble that took time to fix. Owen never complained. In fact, he seemed calmer after each trip. Focused. Present in a way he hadn't been before Victoria entered their lives. Graham saw stability. He missed the isolation. Friday, September 7th, 2007. Owen sat at the kitchen table doing calculus homework. Victoria cooked pasta, humming something Graham didn't recognize. Normal. Comfortable. Safe. Graham kissed them both before his overnight shift. 12 hours in the ER. Gunshot wound. Car accident. Overdose. The kind of night that made coming home to a quiet house feel like mercy. Saturday morning, he found a note on the counter in Victoria's handwriting. Took Owen out early. Weather's perfect. Back by dinner. Love you. Graham smiled. Poured coffee. Fell asleep on the couch, still wearing scrubs. He woke up Sunday afternoon to 17 missed calls. Friday, September 13th, 2007. 5:47 a.m. Graham woke to the sound of the truck starting in the driveway. Stumbled to the window, still half asleep. Victoria loading gear into the bed. Cooler. Fishing rods. Emergency kit. Owen climbed into the passenger seat wearing the gray hoodie she'd bought him. University of Southern Maine logo across the chest. Graham tapped on the glass. Owen looked up, waved. Victoria blew him a kiss. Back by Sunday dinner, she mouthed through the windshield. Graham waved back. Watched the taillights disappear down the street. That was the last time he saw them. Not because they died. Because they chose to vanish. Years later, after the letter arrived from Owen's childhood friend, Graham would pull out old journals. Police had reviewed them in 2007, found nothing concerning. But Graham read them differently now. May 2007. She says it's normal to feel confused. That I'm just figuring out who I am. July 2007. I can't tell Dad. He wouldn't understand. He'd ruin everything. August 2007. She says we'll go somewhere no one knows us. Somewhere we can just be. The ocean didn't take them. Victoria did. Slowly. Carefully. Right in front of Graham's face. Graham thought he'd rescued his son from loneliness. He'd handed him to a predator who wore patience like a uniform. And by the time he realized what had been happening under his own roof, they were already 17 years gone. Sunday, September 15th, 2007. 8:47 p.m. Graham's phone rang. Unknown number. Graham answered on the second ring, expecting Victoria apologizing for running late. Mr. Holloway? This is Petty Officer Ramirez with the Coast Guard. We need you to come to the station immediately. Graham's stomach dropped. What happened? Are they hurt? We recovered a vessel registered to Victoria Brennan approximately 2 hours ago. 18 miles offshore. No occupants aboard. The room tilted. What do you mean no occupants? Sir, we need you to come identify some items. Can you get here within the hour? Graham drove 90 miles an hour down Route 295 still wearing the scrubs from his shift. Coast Guard Station Portland. 10:22 p.m. They led him to a dock where their sailboat sat under floodlights. Engine still warm. Hull intact. No damage. A female officer walked him through what they'd found. Vessel was reported drifting at 6:40 p.m. by a commercial fishing crew. Engine running at idle speed. Radio functional, but no distress calls logged. She gestured to the deck. Cooler sitting open. Sandwiches wrapped in foil. 2 bottles of water. Granola bars. An orange cut in half. Owen's Red Sox cap tucked under the captain's chair. Victoria's waterproof jacket folded on the passenger seat. Life jackets missing, both of them. No blood. No overturned equipment. No signs of struggle. Just absence. Where are they? Graham's voice cracked. The officer met his eyes. We don't know yet. They launched the operation at dawn. 13 days. Coast Guard helicopters circling in grid patterns. Dive teams scanning the ocean floor. Volunteer boats dragging sonar equipment across 400 square miles. Local news ran the story every night. Mother and son missing after sailing trip. Community vigils at the harbor. Yellow ribbons tied to the marina gates. Graham gave interviews. Provided dental records. Described what they were wearing. Victoria, navy windbreaker, white shirt, jeans. Owen, gray hoodie, cargo shorts, sneakers. They're strong swimmers, he repeated to every reporter. Victoria served 8 years Coast Guard. She wouldn't take risks. Day 5, nothing. Day 9, still nothing. Day 13, the Coast Guard commander called Graham into his office. Mr. Holloway, we've exhausted our search radius. Water temperature, currents, time elapsed. If they went overboard, recovery at this point is unlikely. So you're giving up? We're suspending active operations. But the case remains open. Open. Like a wound that wouldn't close. Detective Lisa Morrison took over the land-based investigation. She pulled Victoria's service records. Honorable discharge. No disciplinary actions. Exemplary performance reviews. Checked bank accounts. No unusual withdrawals. No new credit cards. No large purchases before the trip. Searched their home. No notes. No journals indicating distress. Victoria's laptop showed weather reports, marina invoices, an email to a friend 2 days before about engine maintenance. Owen's phone last pinged 4 miles from the harbor launch point, then went dark. Every angle hit a wall. No life insurance policies recently updated. No debt. No affair. No motive for running. Morrison sat across from Graham at the kitchen table 6 weeks after the disappearance. Mr. Holloway, I've seen a lot of missing persons cases. This one doesn't fit any pattern I recognize. No evidence of foul play. No indication of intent to flee. It's like they just stopped existing. Graham stared at his hands. So what does that mean? It means we keep the case open. But without new evidence, there's not much more we can do. March 18, 2008. Cumberland County Courthouse. Family Courtroom, 3B. Graham sat in the second row while a judge reviewed paperwork he'd signed 3 weeks prior. In the matter of Victoria and Brennan and Owen Michael Holloway, this court finds sufficient evidence to declare both parties legally deceased as of September 15, 2007. Presumed drowned in open water. The gavel came down. 2 lives ended with a sound like a door closing. Graham walked out into cold rain. No funeral. No caskets. No graves to visit. Just a declaration that turned people into past tense. Graham kept their bedroom exactly as they left it. Victoria's reading glasses on the nightstand. Owen's debate trophy on the dresser. The left side of the bed made, undisturbed. He changed the sheets every month, but never slept on her side. Every September 15th, he lit 2 candles in the window. No ceremony. No prayers. Just flames burning until dawn. He never dated. When friends tried setting him up, he'd decline politely. I'm not ready. 17 years of not ready. The life insurance company denied the claim. No bodies recovered. Unresolved case. Insufficient proof of death beyond legal declaration. Graham hired 3 lawyers over 8 years. Same result every time. Claim suspended indefinitely. He lost the house in 2016. Mortgage payments fell behind. Bank foreclosed. He moved to a 1-bedroom apartment in South Portland overlooking a parking lot. Sold Victoria's truck. Most of the furniture. Everything that reminded him of before. Except 1 box. Owen's journals. Victoria's Coast Guard medals. Wedding photos. He kept working. Double shifts. Overnight rotations. Holidays. Anything to stay out of the apartment where silence felt like drowning. Co-workers at Maine Medical noticed. Graham aged differently. Grayer. Thinner. Moved through the ER with mechanical precision, but no joy. He volunteered for every trauma case. Gunshots. Overdoses. Car wrecks. The kind of chaos that required focus so complete there was no room for thought. One nurse asked him once, in 2019, if he ever considered grief counseling. Graham looked at her like she'd suggested flying. You can't grieve what you don't understand. She didn't ask again. Most people bury their dead and move forward. Graham carried ghosts that weighed the same as living people. Every time his phone rang, part of him expected it to be them. Lost. Confused. Finally found. Every time he saw a teenage boy with Owen's build, his heart would stop for half a second. Every time he passed the marina, he'd look for Victoria's silhouette on the docks. They were gone. But they weren't. And that's what broke him slowly, over 6,205 days. Not grief. Limbo. Not loss. Suspension. The human mind needs endings. It needs to know. Without that, you don't heal. You just hollow out. For 17 years, Graham believed the ocean took them. He was wrong. The ocean gave them back. He just didn't know it yet. October 2018. Graham found it in his mailbox wedged between a utility bill and grocery store coupons. Plain white envelope. No return address. Boston postmark. Inside, 3 pages, handwritten in careful blue ink. Mr. Holloway, my name is Ethan Mills. I don't know if you remember me. I was Owen's best friend from middle school through sophomore year. We lost touch after he started spending all his time with your wife. I've thought about sending this letter for 11 years. I didn't know if it mattered. I still don't. But I can't carry it alone anymore. Spring 2007. Owen told me he was in love with someone he shouldn't be. That he couldn't tell you because you'd never understand. That if anyone found out, it would ruin everything. I thought he meant a boy. I figured he was gay and scared to come out. So I told him I'd keep his secret. That he could talk to me whenever he needed. But he never brought it up again. And 3 months later, he was gone. After the news broke, I kept waiting for someone to ask me if Owen seemed upset, if he'd mentioned anything strange. But no one did. And I convinced myself what he'd said didn't matter. That it was just teenage confusion. But now I'm 29. I have a daughter. And I keep thinking about what he said. She says it's okay. She says we're not hurting anyone. She. Not he. She. Mr. Holloway, I think Owen was talking about Victoria. I think something was happening that none of us saw. And I think that's why they left. I'm sorry I stayed quiet. I'm sorry if this makes everything worse. But you deserve to know. Ethan. Graham read the letter 4 times that night. Then he went to the closet, pulled down the box he'd kept for 11 years. Owen's journals, 3 spiral notebooks police had reviewed in 2007 and returned, finding nothing relevant. Graham had only flipped through them once. Couldn't bear reading his son's handwriting. Now he read every page. Most entries were typical. Homework complaints. Movie reviews. Observations about classmates. But scattered throughout, starting in late 2006, other things emerged. November 3rd, 2006. She says I'm more mature than other people my age. That most 16-year-olds are still children, but I'm different. I like when she says that. Makes me feel seen. February 17th, 2007. Dad asked why I don't hang out with friends anymore. Didn't know what to say. How do you explain that being around people your own age feels like wearing clothes that don't fit? May 22nd, 2007. She says it's normal to feel confused. That I'm just figuring out who I am. That what we have is special and most people wouldn't understand because they've never experienced connection like this. July 8th, 2007. I can't tell Dad. He wouldn't understand. He'd try to stop it. He'd ruin everything. She's the only person who really knows me. August 29th, 2007. She says we could go somewhere no one knows us. Somewhere we don't have to hide. Somewhere we can just be. I told her I'm scared. She said fear is just love that hasn't found courage yet. Graham's hands shook so hard the notebook fell. He called Detective Morrison the next morning. She'd retired in 2015, but her daughter gave him a cell number. Morrison agreed to meet him at a coffee shop in South Portland that afternoon. Graham brought the letter, the journals, pages marked with sticky notes. Morrison read in silence for 20 minutes. When she looked up, her expression had changed. "We reviewed these in 2007. I remember thinking Owen sounded lonely, but relatively normal for a teenager. You were looking for depression, for self-harm, for reasons he might have wanted to disappear." "Yes." "Read them again," Graham said. "But this time, ask yourself, what if he didn't want to leave? What if someone convinced him it was the only option?" Morrison went through the journals again, slower this time. When she finished, she set them down carefully. "Grooming." Graham nodded. She isolated him from his peers, made him feel special, told him their relationship was misunderstood, framed leaving as an act of courage instead of abandonment. Morrison rubbed her temples. "Mr. Holloway, even if this is true, and I believe it might be, there's no crime we can prosecute. Owen was 16. Legal age of consent in Maine is 16. And without evidence of coercion or abuse, there's nothing actionable. I'm not asking you to prosecute anyone. I'm asking you to tell me I'm not losing my mind." Morrison met his eyes. "You're not. I think your wife spent years manipulating your son. And I think when he turned 16, she saw an opportunity to rewrite both their lives." Graham walked out of that coffee shop understanding something he'd avoided for 11 years. Owen hadn't drowned. He'd been taken. Not violently. Not suddenly. But methodically. Over months. Maybe years. Victoria had groomed a child, his child, and when the boy was old enough to travel without raising immediate alarms, she'd orchestrated their exit. The boat. The missing life jackets. The perfect staging. They'd made it look like an accident so no one would search for them as fugitives. And it worked. For 17 years, it worked. 2018 to 2024. Graham lived differently after Ethan's letter. The grief shifted. No longer mourning the dead. Now mourning the stolen. He joined online forums for families of missing persons. Read about cases where people vanished intentionally. Learn that with patience, cash, and new identities, disappearing wasn't impossible. He searched databases of unidentified remains monthly. Part of him still hoped he was wrong, that they really had drowned and someday their bodies would surface. But mostly, he just waited. For proof. For closure. For anything that would confirm what he now believed. And then, May 19th, 2024, Bob sent a video from Colombia. 29 seconds that validated 6 years of suspicion. They weren't dead. They were dancing. The letter didn't bring Graham peace. It brought clarity. And clarity, he would learn, is far more dangerous than ignorance. Because once you know the truth, you have to decide what to do with it. May 23rd, 2024. Graham landed in Cartagena at 2:15 p.m. The heat hit him like opening an oven door. He checked into a budget hotel in Getsemani. Cracked tile floors, fan that rattled more than it cooled, window overlooking the street where Bob had filmed the festival. Graham didn't unpack. Just dropped the duffel bag and walked. No plan. No contacts. Just a screenshot and 17 years of questions. For 3 days, he walked the same 12-block radius. Studied faces in markets. Watched crowds at plazas. Memorized storefronts, vendor schedules, the rhythm of the neighborhood. He showed the screenshot to no one. Couldn't risk word spreading that someone was looking for the Americans. His Spanish was minimal, enough to order food, ask directions, blend in as another tourist. But he wasn't sightseeing. He was hunting. Day 4. Tuesday morning. Graham passed a small language school near Plaza de la Trinidad. Hand-painted sign above the door, Clases de Angles, Professor Rosa. Rosa, not Victoria. He walked past without stopping. Circled the block. Came back from the opposite direction. Through the window, he could see a classroom. 8 students. A woman at the front writing verb conjugations on a whiteboard. Older now. gray threading through hair she used to keep dark, reading glasses perched on her nose. But the posture, the way she held the marker, the gesture she made when explaining something. Victoria. Graham bought a guidebook and a baseball cap, found a bench across the plaza with a clear view of the school's entrance, then waited. 9:47 a.m., the door opened. Victoria stepped out carrying a canvas bag and a coffee mug. She walked 3 blocks east, stopped at a small yellow house with blue shutters and bougainvillea climbing the gate, unlocked the door, disappeared inside. Graham waited across the street, pulse hammering. 11:20 a.m., the door opened again. A man stepped out, toolbox in hand, faded shirt with a boat repair company logo across the back. Taller now, broader through the shoulders, beard covering what used to be a smooth teenage face. Owen, 33 years old, alive, walking down the street like any other Tuesday morning. Graham spent the next week learning their routine. He asked around carefully, claimed to be looking for an English tutor for his nephew visiting next month. Locals knew them. Rosa and Mateo, quiet couple, been in the neighborhood about 15 years. She teaches at the school 3 days a week. He fixes boats down at the marina. Nice people, keep to themselves mostly. 15 years. They'd been here since 2009, 2 years after the Coast Guard declared them dead. While Graham was signing legal documents and losing his house, they were building a life 3,000 miles south. New names, new jobs, new everything, except each other. Tuesday and Thursday mornings, grocery shopping at the Mercado. Victoria, Rosa, selected produce while Owen carried the bags. Evenings, walks along the waterfront, her hand in his arm around her shoulders. Wednesday afternoons, Owen worked at the marina while Victoria taught classes. Saturdays, they stayed home, cooked together, sat on the porch drinking wine. They moved like people who'd been together for decades, finishing each other's sentences, synchronized steps, comfortable silences. Graham watched from across streets, through cafe windows, behind sunglasses and tourist maps. He took no photos, made no recordings, just memorized. Thursday afternoon, open-air restaurant near the beach. Graham sat 3 tables away, hidden behind a newspaper he couldn't read. Victoria and Owen ordered ceviche, shared a plate, laughed at something only they understood. Owen reached across the table, took her hand, held it while they waited for drinks. The silver ring on her finger caught the sunlight. Same ring Graham placed there 18 years ago in a small ceremony with lavender flowers and 40 guests. She'd kept it, wore it for another man, for his son. Graham's vision tunneled. His hands gripped the table edge until his knuckles went white. That night, Graham sat on the edge of his hotel bed and wrote a letter. Not to them, to himself. They didn't just leave. They erased me. They built a new life on top of my grave while I spent 17 years drowning in a house full of their ghosts. I lit candles for corpses who were drinking wine 3,000 miles away. I mourned a son who was sleeping with the woman I trusted to protect him. The law says there's no crime here. Age of consent. No coercion they can prove. Just 2 people who chose each other and let me believe they were dead. But there's a difference between legal and forgivable. I didn't come here for answers. I came here to end what they started. He folded the letter, placed it in his wallet next to Owen's school photo. Then he left the hotel. Near the fish market, Graham found what he was looking for. A man selling more than seafood. Small operation. Cash only. Necesito protection, Graham said. I need protection. The man studied him. Tourist. Older. Desperate. $220. $220. Graham handed over the cash. Received a revolver wrapped in cloth. 6 bullets. No ID requested. No questions asked. Graham walked back to his hotel with the weight of it in his bag. He didn't sleep that night. Just sat staring at the weapon, thinking about 17 years of unanswered questions and 2 people who thought they'd gotten away with it. Some people travel to find themselves. Graham traveled to Colombia to finish what Victoria and Owen had started the day they let him believe they drowned. He'd spent 17 years as a ghost. Now it was their turn. If you had 3 minutes alone with the people who stole your life, would you demand answers, or would you take away their ability to ever lie to you again? May 31st, 2024, 7:52 p.m. The sun dropped below the rooftops, painting the street in shades of orange and shadow. Graham stood across from the yellow house, back against a weathered wall. He'd been there 40 minutes, watching through the window as they moved inside, cooking dinner, passing each other in the small kitchen, touching casually like they'd done it 10,000 times. At 7:48 p.m., the front door opened. Victoria stepped onto the porch, carrying 2 wine glasses. Owen followed with a small speaker, playing music Graham couldn't identify from this distance. They were going to sit, drink, watch the stars like nothing in the world could touch them. Graham stepped into the streetlight. He walked slowly toward the gate, each step measured, deliberate. Owen saw him first, froze mid-step, wine glass tilting dangerously in his hand. His face went pale. Victoria followed his gaze, turned, met Graham's eyes. For 5 seconds, no one moved. No one breathed. Owen's glass slipped from his fingers, shattered on concrete. Victoria whispered something that sounded like, "No." Graham stopped at the gate, close enough to see their faces clearly, far enough to keep distance. "Hello, Victoria." "Owen." Owen stepped forward, hands raised like approaching something dangerous. "Dad, don't call me that." Graham's voice was quiet, steady, the same tone he used in the ER when delivering bad news to families. "You lost that right when you let me bury you." Victoria set down her glass with shaking hands. "Graham, please. Let us explain." "Explain?" He laughed once. Sharp. Hollow. "You're going to explain how you groomed my son? How you took a 16-year-old boy and turned him into this?" He gestured at Owen. "How you faked your deaths and let me spend 17 years thinking you drowned." Victoria's voice cracked. "It wasn't like that. We didn't plan." "You didn't plan to fall in love?" Graham's words came faster now. "That's the story you're going with?" He was 16. You were 30_8. You don't get to rewrite that. Owen moved between them. "I wasn't a child. I knew what I wanted. She didn't force me." Graham stared at his son, this stranger with familiar eyes. "You were 16, and she spent 2 years isolating you from everyone your age, making you think you were special, different, mature." His voice dropped. "I read your journals, Owen. She says it's okay. She says we're not hurting anyone. That's not love. That's manipulation." Owen's face flushed. "You don't understand." "I understand exactly what happened. She groomed you. And when you were old enough to travel without raising immediate suspicion, she convinced you to disappear." Victoria stepped forward. "We knew you'd never accept us. We knew you'd try to separate us. Because what you were doing was wrong." "Says who?" "The law." Owen was 16. Legal age of consent in Maine. Legal doesn't mean right. Graham's voice rose for the first time. He was a child grieving a mother he never knew. "And you used that. You saw a vulnerable kid, and you took advantage." "I loved him," Victoria said. "You don't love children like that. You don't take teenagers and turn them into partners. You were supposed to protect him. I trusted you with my son. I'm 33 now." Owen's voice shook. "I've made my own choices for 17 years. This is my life." Graham looked at Owen. Really looked. "And what about me? What choice did you give me?" Silence. "I got a death certificate with your name on it. I signed papers declaring you legally dead. I paid for a memorial bench. I lit candles every September 15th for 17 years. His voice cracked. "I kept your room exactly how you left it for a decade. I lost my house because the insurance wouldn't pay out. I worked myself to exhaustion so I wouldn't have to go home to a place that still smelled like you." Owen's eyes filled with tears. "We didn't mean to hurt you." "You didn't mean to hurt me?" Graham's laugh was bitter. "You let me mourn you. You let me believe the ocean swallowed you whole. You let me live like a ghost while you built this." He gestured at the house, the porch, the wine glasses. You were here, dancing, laughing, and I was in Portland lighting candles for corpses. Victoria took a step back. Graham, think about what you're doing. I've thought about nothing else for 17 years. Graham pulled the revolver from his waistband, held it loosely at his side. Victoria gasped. Owen moved in front of her instinctively. Dad, don't. Please. You keep calling me that. But you stopped being my son the day you chose her over me. His hand trembled. The gun felt heavier than it had an hour ago. 17 years. I waited 17 years. And you were here, wearing her wedding ring like I never existed. Owen's voice broke. If you do this, you'll go to prison. I've been in prison since September 15th, 2007. At least this way, I'll know why. Victoria. Graham, we can talk about this. There's nothing left to talk about. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Graham raised the weapon. His hand steadied. Owen stepped fully in front of Victoria. Then you'll have to shoot me first. Graham looked at his son. 33 years old. Beard. Calloused hands. A stranger wearing Owen's face. You let me mourn you. That's a death sentence I never deserved. First shot. Victoria. Center mass. Before she could move, she dropped. Eyes wide. Clutching her chest. Owen screamed. Lunged forward. Second shot. Owen. Shoulder. Spun him backward. He fell beside Victoria. Their hands found each other even as blood spread beneath them. Graham stood over them, gun hanging loose in his hand. Neighbors screamed. Doors slammed. Footsteps scattered in every direction. Owen's eyes found Graham's. Blood bubbling at his lips. Why? Graham knelt down, looked his son in the eyes one last time. Because you chose her. And I chose to stop being the only one who paid for it. Owen's eyes closed. Victoria's breathing slowed, then stopped. Graham set the gun on the ground, sat on the porch steps, waited for the police. Sirens in the distance. 2 bodies on a Colombian street. And a father who finally stopped waiting for ghosts to come home. If this story has made you feel something, anger, heartbreak, confusion, maybe even sympathy for someone you didn't expect, then it's doing what it's supposed to do. These aren't easy truths. They're the kind that sit heavy long after the video ends. If you think someone else needs to hear this, share it. Hit like not because I asked, but because stories like this deserve to be heard. The arrest happened in under 7 minutes. Graham didn't run. Sat on the porch steps with his hands visible. Gun on the ground 5 feet away. 2 bodies. Colombian authorities contacted the U.S. Embassy within hours. Confirmed identities. Victoria and Brennan, Owen Michael Holloway. Both declared legally dead in Maine, 2008. Both very much alive until 8:04 p.m., May 31st, 2024. The United States requested extradition. Colombia declined. Crime occurred on Colombian soil. Colombian jurisdiction. Graham was charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder. Public defender assigned, Maria Santos. 34. Sharp. Overworked. She sat across from Graham in a concrete interview room 3 days after his arrest. Mr. Holloway, you confessed. Multiple times. To multiple officers. On video. The prosecution has an airtight case. I know. Then we need to talk about mitigation. Reduced sentence. Mental state at time of. I don't want mitigation. Maria stopped writing. Excuse me. I want them to understand why. That's all. Understanding doesn't reduce a murder charge. I'm not asking it to. Trial began August 12, 2024. Cartagena Criminal Court. Packed gallery. International media attention. The prosecution laid out their case in 3 hours. Graham Holloway tracked 2 individuals across international borders. Conducted surveillance for over a week. Purchased an illegal weapon. Confronted them in public. Executed them both. Premeditated. Calculated. Murder in the first degree. They presented evidence. Hotel receipts showing his arrival date. Witness statements placing him near the victim's home multiple days. The gun dealer's testimony. The confession recorded at the station. This was not a crime of passion. This was a hunt. Mr. Holloway came to Colombia with one purpose: to kill these people. He succeeded, and now he must face the consequences. No defense attorney objected. Maria had advised Graham there was nothing to object to. Maria Santos didn't deny the act. She contextualized it. Graham Holloway didn't break. He eroded. Over 6,205 days of living in a state psychologists call ambiguous loss. She brought in Dr. Elena Ruiz, psychiatrist specializing in prolonged grief disorders. Dr. Ruiz spoke calmly, precisely. When someone you love disappears without resolution, the brain cannot process it as death. You exist in perpetual suspension. Part of you is frozen in the moment they vanished. The other part moves forward mechanically, but without healing. She explained how ambiguous loss destroys identity, how it creates a permanent state of trauma that compounds over years. Now add betrayal, the discovery that the people you mourned chose to leave, that they built a life while you spent nearly 2 decades in psychological limbo. The damage compounds exponentially. Maria introduced Ethan Mills's letter, Owen's journal entries, the timeline of Victoria's behavior with a teenage boy. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was the final act of a man who died 17 years ago and only realized it when he saw them dancing. Graham didn't testify, but he'd written a statement. Maria read it to the court. I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't expect sympathy. I killed 2 people. I understand what that makes me under the law, but I also understand what they did. They didn't just leave. They buried me alive and walked away. For 17 years, I was a ghost in my own life. I lit candles for people drinking wine in Colombia. I mourned a son who was sleeping with the woman I trusted to protect him. Every September 15th, I marked the anniversary of their deaths. They weren't dead. They were just done with me. I lost my house, my savings, my ability to move forward. Not because they died, but because they chose to let me believe they had. The law calls this murder. I call it the end of a sentence I never deserved to serve. I'm not asking to be excused. I'm asking to be understood. The courtroom sat in silence when Maria finished reading. The jury deliberated 11 hours. Returned with a split decision. Guilty on both counts. Second-degree murder. Premeditated but emotionally provoked. Sentencing, 28 years. Eligible for parole after 18 years. When the judge read the verdict, Graham didn't react. No tears. No outburst. Just a slow nod. Maria leaned over. We can appeal. No. Mr. Holloway. I'm 62. If I serve 18 years, I'll be 80 when I'm eligible for release. That's fine. That's not fine. That's the rest of your life. Graham looked at her. I haven't had a life since 2007. At least now I know why. They let him out of the courtroom in chains. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions he didn't answer. Somewhere in the back of the gallery, a woman from the victim advocacy group held a sign. Justice for Victoria and Owen. Graham saw it. Didn't look away. Justice meant different things to different people. To him, it meant finally stopping the drowning. Graham Holloway is currently serving his sentence at Combata Maximum Security Prison, 3 hours outside Cartagena. He's 62 years old. He'll be 80 when he's eligible for parole. Graham works in the prison infirmary. His ER nursing background made him useful. Treats infections. Stitches cuts. Dispenses medication under guard supervision. Keeps to himself. Doesn't socialize. Doesn't cause problems. Other inmates know his story. International news covered the trial extensively. Some respect what he did. Others find it disturbing. Most just leave him alone. He's become what he was in Portland after the disappearance. Functional. Present. Empty. Graham receives mail occasionally. Strangers who followed the case. Some call him a hero. You did what any father would do. Some call him a monster. You murdered your own son. He reads each one once. Files them in a box under his bunk. Responds to none. Detective Morrison sent a letter 6 months after the trial. I'm sorry we didn't see it in 2007. I'm sorry you had to be the one to end it. I don't know if what you did was right, but I understand why you did it. Graham kept that one separate from the others. Back in Cartagena, the house where Victoria and Owen lived sits empty. Colombian authorities seized it after the shooting. No next of kin came forward to claim their belongings. It stayed vacant 8 months before being sold at auction. New family moved in, repainted the walls, tore out the garden, removed every trace of Rosa and Mateo. Neighbors still mention them sometimes. The quiet Americans who lived there 15 years and died in a single night. But memory fades. New people move in. Life continues. Victoria and Owen were cremated in Cartagena. Standard procedure for unclaimed remains. Their ashes sit in a storage unit at a municipal funeral home. 2 plastic urns. No names on file. Just case numbers. No one from the United States requested them. No family. No friends. They remain there. Together. Nameless. Waiting for someone who will never come. Still hiding. Even in death. Every morning, Graham wakes at 5:30 a.m., eats breakfast in the cafeteria. Reports to the infirmary by 7 o'clock. Works until 3 p.m., returns to his cell. Reads. Sleeps. No phone calls. No visitors. No contact with the outside world beyond occasional letters. He doesn't mark the anniversaries anymore. No candles. No rituals. September 15th passes like any other day. The dead don't need ceremonies. They're just dead. Prison officials allow Graham to keep a notebook. He writes in it sporadically. One entry, dated November 2024. People ask if I regret it. The answer is complicated. I regret not seeing what Victoria was doing when Owen was still young enough to save. I regret trusting her with him. I regret every candle I lit for people who were laughing at my grief. But pulling that trigger? No. That was the first honest thing I'd done in 17 years. I'm not proud of it, but I don't regret it. Some betrayals don't heal. Some wounds don't close. And some ghosts don't rest until you make them. The case went viral for 3 months. Podcasts dissected every angle. Documentaries interviewed experts. Think pieces debated morality. Was Graham justified? Was Owen a victim twice, once of grooming, again of his father? Did Victoria deserve death? Did Owen? The debates raged, then faded. New stories replaced them. Within 6 months, Graham Holloway became a footnote. A cautionary tale people referenced but didn't remember clearly. The internet moves fast. Tragedy becomes content. Content becomes forgotten. Graham will serve at least 18 years. By the time he's eligible for parole, he'll be an old man. Most of his life behind him. No family waiting. No home to return to. But for the first time in 17 years, he's not waiting for ghosts to walk through the door. He's not listening for phone calls that never come. He's not drowning in a house full of candles for people who never died. He's just serving time. And time, at least, has an ending. If you were Graham Holloway, with 18 years left to serve, would you trade those years for the 17 they stole, or would you choose to have never known the truth at all? Thank you for watching to the end, and see you in our next episode of Compass True Crime Stories. Stay safe.